The Valkorian High Command watched their displays with growing confusion. Their invasion of the human territories had been successful beyond measure. 47 planets had fallen in 3 standard months. Ground forces across the Imperial frontier had laid down their weapons. Billions of humans now lived under Valkorian occupation. The war should have been over. But the human fleet refused to die. Admiral Helena Vance stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Unbroken Spirit. Her gray eyes scanned the tactical display showing the remnants of her command. 63 ships remained from an original force of 400. They floated in the darkness between stars, hidden within the electromagnetic soup of the Cygnus Nebula. Every vessel bore the scars of desperate battles. Hull breaches had been sealed with emergency patches. Weapon systems ran at half capacity. Engine cores burned on reserve power. None of it mattered. The fleet would fight until the last reactor went cold. Commander Jiang Wei approached her station with a data tablet. His uniform hung loose on a frame that had lost 20 pounds since the invasion began. Sleep had become a distant memory for everyone in the fleet. They survived on stimulants and stubborn pride. "Admiral, we intercepted another broadcast from the Valkyrian Dominion Council," he said. "They are demanding our surrender again. They say resistance is meaningless now that our homeworlds have fallen." Helena did not look up from her display. "What are their terms?" "Unconditional surrender. Immediate transfer of all vessels to Valkorian control. Officers will face trial for what they call crimes against the Dominion." A cold smile crossed her face. Their previous demand mentioned internment camps. Now they want trials. "I wonder what changed their minds." Jiang matched her smile. "Perhaps losing another supply convoy to our torpedo boats made them reconsider." The campaign of resistance had begun the moment Central Command on Earth transmitted its final message before going silent. The planetary garrisons had surrendered to save civilian lives. The decision made strategic sense. Ground forces could not hold against orbital bombardment. Millions would have died in futile resistance. But the fleet operated under different rules. Ships could run. Ships could hide. Ships could strike from the darkness and vanish before retaliation arrived. The Valkyrians had learned this lesson through blood and fire. Helena pulled up the fleet's operational record from the past 90 days. 42 confirmed kills on Valkorian warships. 117 transport vessels destroyed or captured. 3 orbital stations reduced to debris. The cost had been terrible. 237 Imperial ships lost with all hands. Thousands of sailors floating frozen in the void. Worth it. Every single loss was worth it. The Valkorians had expected easy occupation. They had expected broken humans accepting their fate. Instead, they faced an enemy that refused to acknowledge defeat. Their supply lines stretched across conquered territory, now burned with regularity. Garrison forces on occupied worlds found themselves isolated when convoys failed to arrive. The mighty Valkorian war machine was bleeding from 1,000 cuts. Captain Sarah Okonkwo commanded the cruiser Defiant Hope from the fleet's forward picket position. Her ship had been designed for fleet engagements, running in formation with dozens of similar vessels. Now it operated alone, hunting the shipping lanes like a wolf among sheep. Her tactical officer highlighted a contact on the edge of sensor range. Single vessel, Captain. Configuration matches a Valkorian troop transport, heading toward the Kepler colonies. Sarah studied the target. Troop transports meant reinforcements for occupation forces. Reinforcements meant tighter control over human populations. Tighter control meant more suffering for her people. "All hands to battle stations," she ordered. "We take them before they reach the colony." The Defiant Hope accelerated out of the nebula's concealing gases. Her engines burned hot and bright against the stellar background. Stealth was impossible during an attack run. Speed and violence of action would determine survival. The Valkorian transport detected them too late. Its escort vessel, a light destroyer, moved to intercept. Plasma cannons charged across both ships, the void between them filled with deadly energy. Sarah watched the incoming fire with professional calm. Her helmsman was the best in the fleet. 3 years of academy training and 5 years of service had honed his skills to perfection. "Evasive pattern Delta," she commanded. The cruiser rolled and twisted through the plasma barrage. Most shots missed entirely. 2 struck glancing blows against the armored hull. Damage reports flooded her console. Minor breaches on decks 7 and 12. Casualties minimal. Return fire from the Defiant Hope found its mark. The destroyer's shields flickered and died under concentrated bombardment. A final volley punched through the reactor housing. The enemy ship vanished in a flash of released energy. The transport tried to run. It had no chance. Cruisers were built for pursuit. Within minutes, the Defiant Hope had closed the boarding range. "Prepare Marine teams," Sarah ordered. "I want that ship intact." 40 minutes later, the transport belonged to the Imperial fleet. Its cargo holds contained 3,000 Valkorian soldiers intended for the occupation of Kepler 442b. They would spend the rest of the war in a hidden detention facility on a moon nobody had bothered to name. Back in the nebula, Admiral Vance received a victory report with grim satisfaction. Every captured soldier was one less oppressor on human worlds. Every destroyed transport was one less threat to civilian populations. She had never imagined fighting this kind of war. Her career had been built on fleet tactics and large-scale engagements. The Academy had trained her to command battle groups against enemy formations. Nobody had taught her how to lead a guerrilla navy operating without bases, without supply lines, without hope of reinforcement. She learned anyway. They all did. Lieutenant Commander Marcus Webb served as her chief intelligence officer. His job had become the most important in the fleet. Every scrap of information about Valkorian movements passed through his analysis section. He tracked patrol routes, identified supply schedules, and mapped the defensive weaknesses of occupation forces. "Admiral," he said during their evening briefing, "I have confirmed reports from the Resistance Network on Proxima Centauri. The Valkorians are pulling troops from the outer colonies to reinforce their core holdings." Helena considered this information. "They are stretching themselves thin." "Exactly. Our attacks have forced them to concentrate their forces. Worlds on the frontier are becoming vulnerable." "Vulnerable to what?" "We cannot recapture territory with 60 ships," Marcus smiled. "We cannot hold territory. But the resistance cells can. Give them weapons, and they can make occupation impossible." The strategy evolved over the following weeks. Imperial fleet vessels began conducting supply runs instead of pure combat operations. Weapons caches appeared on a dozen worlds. Training materials reached resistance leaders through encrypted channels. The fleet became the lifeline for an insurgency spreading across occupied space. The Valkyrian response was predictable. They increased patrols along shipping lanes. They established hunter-killer groups tasked with finding the human remnant. They threatened reprisals against civilian populations for supporting resistance activities. None of it worked. The fleet had become a ghost. It appeared without warning, struck with devastating force, and vanished before pursuit could organize. Valkorian commanders spent sleepless nights wondering where the next attack would fall. Their subordinates requested transfers to quiet sectors far from human space. 6 months after the invasion, High Marshal Korvax summoned his senior officers to the command citadel above occupied Earth. The meeting was classified at the highest level. What they discussed could never reach public ears. "The human fleet remains operational," Korvax stated flatly. 6 months of hunting has produced nothing. Our losses continue to mount. Supply convoys require battleship escorts to reach their destinations. This situation is unacceptable. Admiral Thren commanded the pursuit forces. His record showed nothing but failure since the campaign began. "High Marshal, the humans hide within nebulae and asteroid fields where our sensors cannot penetrate. They know this region of space far better than we do. Then learn it better, Korvax snapped. I did not conquer 47 worlds to watch my empire bleed to death from a handful of ships. The Valkorians did not understand what they faced. They came from a culture that valued survival above honor. Surrender was logical when victory became impossible. Their species had built an empire through calculated aggression and timely withdrawal. Humans were different. Humans held grudges across generations. Humans remembered defeats and turned them into fuel for future victories. Humans wrote songs about last stands and taught their children to admire those who fought against impossible odds. The Imperial fleet carried that tradition in its bones. Admiral Vance gathered her captains for a holographic conference as the war entered its 8th month. Faces appeared around her table, each one showing the strain of endless combat. They had lost another 12 ships in the past 60 days. 51 vessels remained. Intelligence reports indicate the Valkorians are preparing a major offensive, she told them. They plan to sweep the Cygnus Nebula with overwhelming force. We cannot hide here any longer. Captain Okonkwo spoke first. Where do we go, Admiral? Everywhere and nowhere. I am dispersing the fleet into hunting packs of 3 to 5 ships each. You will operate independently, striking targets of opportunity across occupied space. We will reunite when conditions permit. The tactical shift caught the Valkorians off guard. Instead of one fleet to chase, they suddenly faced a dozen independent threats. Their sweep through Cygnus found nothing but empty space. Meanwhile, attacks increased across their supply network. 1 year after the invasion, the Valkorian economy began showing strain. Military spending had tripled to maintain occupation forces. Civilian populations on Valkorian worlds questioned why so many resources flowed into a conquered territory that refused to stay conquered. Political opposition emerged for the first time in decades. High Marshal Korvax faced his council with a choice he never imagined making: continue the war and risk domestic instability, or negotiate with an enemy that controlled no territory and commanded barely 40 ships. The message reached Admiral Vance through neutral channels. The Valkorians proposed a ceasefire. They would discuss terms for ending hostilities. She read the offer twice before responding. Tell them the Imperial fleet will consider peace when the last Valkorian soldier leaves human space. Not 1 day before. The war continued for another 3 years. It ended when the Valkorian economy collapsed under the weight of occupation costs. Their forces withdrew system by system, leaving behind worlds that had never stopped resisting. Admiral Helena Vance brought the Imperial fleet home on a spring morning in 2157. 17 ships remained from the original 400. They entered orbit above Earth to crowds that filled every city street. People wept and cheered and held signs thanking the sailors who never surrendered. The planetary garrisons had made a logical choice to save lives. History would remember them with understanding. But the fleet had made a different choice. They had chosen defiance over survival. They had kept hope alive when hope seemed foolish. They had proven that some things matter more than life itself. The Valkorians learned a lesson that would echo across the galaxy for generations. Humans might lose battles. Humans might lose worlds, but the human spirit could not be conquered. Not while a single ship remained to carry the flag into darkness.